what? We'll level fund when the other end of Pearl Street level funds.
Really level funds, because they claim that.
Do we have any of those?
I think we have one in COA.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can I have a motion to open the meeting? John, second. Joe? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining? We're in session. So we are, this is actually just a meeting of the Finance Committee. It's not a public hearing, but it is a meeting that the public can attend. So anyway, tonight we're going to review the contract for the Thayer collective bargaining unit, and I think finish up on any other miscellaneous business, so it should go fairly quickly. And then once we adjourn, our IT director has graciously agreed to spend some time after our meeting getting folks acquainted with the iPad, so we're excited about that as well. Anyways, welcome, Ryan. So at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Hartman and Mr. Kelly. Welcome, Mr. Hartman and Mr. Kelly.
Evening.
Okay.
Get away, Jamie.
All of that was unrehearsed.
Since we went over the highlights the last time we met,
Yep.
should we just open it for questions, or?
Sure. Questions from the committee? And this is specifically regarding Thayer contracts. And Pat, did you want to talk about funding here and what we're looking at? I think that's in your other carry-on.
While she's looking, Mr. Chairman, to the members of your committee, Ms. Chatsko and myself met with Pat on Friday and went over all of this, and similar to what we've done with the other contracts when the internal auditor and I were involved with Pat doing it. So it was the same methodology, peeling the onion back and going through every single thing that, every possible permutation of funding and sources and thereof.
So you guys feel pretty confident about these numbers?
Yes.
So it looks like this year would be affected by, let me see, the 47,843, which is fiscal year 15, plus that bonus.
Actually, it said 44 if you round up.
It's 32 cents. You'd round up $47,843.32. And there's a bonus of $28,500, and just off the top of my head, I know that's going to be $75,000 to $76,000 and change. So, do you have the total number, Pat?
75,844. 843.32.
32.
What is it, Ed?
76,344.
Oh, 76, sorry.
I thought that's what I said.
When I met with Jamie on Friday morning, what we were focusing on, I did not verify the numbers on the spreadsheet. I looked at the bottom line. What do we need for 15 and what do we need for 16? And as Rick said, we need, for salaries, we need $47,843.32 for 2015, plus another $28,500 for the signing bonus. So what we looked at is what departments might have some savings that would be turnbacks at the end of the year. And there are two departments right off the bat. The town clerk had a principal clerk position, and human resources had a senior clerk position that were funded full year but were not hired early in the year. So between those two positions, there's about a $50,000 savings. So we said, great, that'll cover the $47,000 figure that we need. So what do we have left for the signing bonus? There may be savings in other departments that they just don't know about yet. I think Jamie has to now go through every single department and see where they stand for the rest of the year and what would be turnbacks. I was looking at FinCom Reserve. Could we take it from there? Now, Rick is saying we can't use FinCom Reserve to pay for collective bargaining agreements, but if a department ran short, we could cover that way? Is that?
Right, so my understanding is if the department had an unforeseen expense that hit it and put it into a negative position, that they could get a transfer from the FinCom to carry that. Whereas we could not directly fund contract settlements out of the FinCom reserve. We ran into that problem on town meeting floor last year, so.
So that metamorphosized into what is the state of the FinCom reserve, because I wanted to know, can we afford to save that money for that? And it looks like there are a lot of potential transfers coming down the pike. So again, not knowing the state of the departments and what they'll have left for turnbacks, we just did a very quick, if everybody needs money who looks like they might be running short, where would we stand? And if you add all of those together with that signing bonus amount, if we were to take all of that from FinCom Reserve, we'd have about $35,000 left in FinCom Reserve. So that's taken us very quickly, but so far, again, worst case scenario, that's what we have. Now, that's not necessarily everything. I don't want to divert into that subject, but that was just the mindset. So it looks like we will be able to find the money for 2015. I don't think anyone's concerned about that. For 2016, obviously, we needed to update the revenue sheet because that's $74,236 that we'll need for that. So that would change our deficit.
We went through and squeezed this budget down again, picked up another $145,000 last Thursday, and disappeared overnight. So there's the FinCom reserve would be the the last rung on the ladder here for this thing. So the department's got to look and see if they can absorb these expenses. Police have had open positions for a while, so I'm surprised that they would have trouble absorbing this, but we can talk about that. The year-end transfers that begin on June 1st, the interdepartmental transfers, which I think, Jamie, you have some dollars there you might be able to use from the town clerk's office and here and there to fund the bonuses. And then the FinCom reserve after that. So, but these need to be all settled up to the best of our ability before town meeting, but so we have a clear cash position as we go into town meeting.
We're going to be squeezing all of the spending plans over the next week, and I'll probably be meeting with Pat end of the week, beginning somewhere. And about that point, we should have, or at least send her an email with where we're targeting to get it done.
Yeah, because just this year, the police buybacks and the contract settlements this year's cost is $175,000. So, never mind any of the other costs here, so. Okay, anything else,
I
Pat?
could just add in, just for next year, we have to come up with a better way to do buybacks for retirements, especially some of the longer-term employees that may have a lot of money in, vacation, sick leave, et cetera, and I don't know that it's necessarily the best way to put a chunk of money in each department budget, but this is 1 year that it's really going to bite us. So I think we need to start thinking what is a better way to handle that, whether we put money in another line item somewhere to cover unanticipated, and then if we don't need it, we give it back. But that's just something people need to start thinking about, because I was really taken aback at potentially $95,000 for 3 people in police alone.
The department heads were told to budget for the buybacks. 2 of these 3 retirements were unexpected, and one was a long-term 111F that we eventually got the PARAC and Norfolk County to accept an accidental in line of duty disability retirement. The real problem with anybody who's on 111F is they accrue full sick and vacation time while they're getting paid full salary 111F and are out on their injury.
That was a surprise to me, so
They're being double paid?
It's by statute
The
that
answer is yes, they're being double paid.
they do not expend any sick time or vacation time when they're out, yes.
And they continue to earn it
While
Yes.
they're out.
by statute.
Right, your legislatures. Roberta first?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have about 3 questions. The first one is, what's a signing bonus?
It is an amount of money that is not on the base, that is given when the contract is executed.
Well, the contract is what?
Executed, signed.
So in other words, because you agree to a contract, you get a bonus?
That was, yes, that was what happened.
When did we institute that policy?
It was for a number of the contracts in the last year.
I understand that, and the problem is that I have a problem with that. Maybe no one else does, but just because you sit down and negotiate and then sign something, I don't understand why you get a bonus. It's not like that in the private sector.
Correct.
So why is it like that here? And then we're asking the taxpayers who are working or collecting Social Security in the private sector to pay for signing bonuses.
Is it my understanding that these bonuses are in lieu of concessions that were made within the contract? To some extent?
That's partially correct, yeah. In the past, the town has paid retroactively. This year, the town has, the Board of Selectmen, in this round of bargaining, decided in advance that there would be no retroactive payments.
Right.
So in essence, what we've done for some of the unions is offer a signing bonus knowing that they could not get retroactivity, and in virtually every case, the signing bonus was less than retroactivity.
Right, and it's a one-time deal, right?
Correct. It does not inure to the base. It does not impact their placement on the grid or their next raise.
Continue, Roberta.
We said no retroactivity, but yet we give them a signing, but we give people a signing bonus, which may or may not. I think in some of the other contracts, the signing bonus was exactly equal to what they would have received retroactively, some of the other contracts that we looked at.
No, they were all less than that.
Makes no difference then to me. I mean, I may be wrong on that, but the point of the matter being is we say something and no retroactivity. We said that at that Saturday meeting, which I referenced once before at a previous meeting. And then we go back and we say, all right, well, now we'll have a signing bonus, but it will be less than retroactive, but it will be 3/4 of what will have been retroactive. And then we ask the taxpayers to pay that. I don't think it's right. I'm not going to vote against a contract because it's the last contract that's here. But I do not think it's right to ask people who do not receive these things in the private sector, nor people in this town, many of whom are on Social Security or worse, to pay for these things. I have some more questions, though. The next question I have is, what is the percent of the increase in wages for this entire contract? Each person, what is the percent?
I heard
of
what is the percent of increase in wages, what?
for each person, is each person increasing by 2.5? Or how is that happening? What's the percentage?
Once they're placed on the grid, each increase is 2.5.
Is 2.5. Okay.
I just interrupt, but to get them on the grid, frequently you give them a little more to find the right place in the grid, is that correct? So going into the grid, maybe more than 2.5?
Yes,
for
going
Berta?
into the grid, you look at approximately 2 to 2.5%, and then you go, if it's 20 cents more to get to that number on the grid, you go there.
So they're getting approximately 2.5,
For each step.
but they may get more than 2.5 because you're putting them on the grid. And as a concession for putting them on the grid, they could get 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever it happened to be.
It most likely would not be as high as 4 or 5.
But some people will get more than 2.5.
Yes. And there might be an exception where someone is in a job group and that whole job group is in a certain grade, and that person just hasn't been in that grade yet. But that would be an exception. And we also folded in a couple side stipends for individual people that were signed anywhere from 3-4 years ago to 7 or 8 years ago, I believe. But there are a couple people that were making somewhere in between $100 to $125 pay period because of additional duties, and it was an agreement that was signed by the town with the union. I think one was 8 years ago and the other was 4 or 5.
All right, this is another question that I had. When the department heads that include the people that are listed in the Section 1 recognition, when a department head produced the budget for 2016, were they asked to include in their projection for 2016 what would be the salary for that person, an approximate amount for the salary of that person, if a contract was accepted by the union and they were placed on the grid?
No, the department heads did not know where the, excuse me, where the positions would be and where various positions would be going into the grid.
Did the budget team do that?
How those, you're talking about the increases, these increases?
Yeah, if you're asking, did we
so
set,
I'm not going
We
to
did not
mention-
include the increases for fiscal
we
year
did not set
16.
aside any money while
We did not set aside any money.
Well,
No, we
the
did not.
process, Roberta, is that we'd fund the article for collective bargaining at town meeting, and then once that's approved, it'd allow the town accountant to go and then distribute that money according to the contract.
What I'm trying to get at here is that we knew there was a contract that was, probably would be settled. And that if we had foresight, we probably would have asked for more monies in these various departments in order to take care of a settlement. And therefore, you see, I don't like the idea of using monies from the reserve account to fund a contract. So the third choice that we heard the chairman meant.
when we were negotiating all of the contracts, we set aside money. It makes no sense at all to set aside money when you're only negotiating with one union, because they're going to lay claim to that entire amount you've set aside.
But the problem is, we don't want to get back into that situation where people think the Finance Committee reserve is a reserve to fund salaries that should have been placed in a budget prior to the passage of that budget.
Well, wait, I don't think we're
And
we're
using it
doing
as
that. I
a
don't think we're
fund
doing
to
that,
do
Roberta.
that.
I think that for next year's money, they didn't know what they were going to need, so that's why we have to do the article. We're using the reserve for this year's budget, ending in June 30th, because it just got settled this year. They would have no idea last January, a year ago January, how much money to put aside for that department
So
for this
previously-
contract. That's why we have to use the
We used-
reserve for this
We
year.
used to fund the selectmen's reserve for collective bargaining, if you recall. We'd put a pile of money in there.
I remember that.
And then whoever they're negotiating with would see the pile of money and say, that's how much we want.
I understand all those parts of it. I just don't want to set the precedent again that the Finance Committee reserve is there to fund collective
Okay,
bargaining.
and I understand your point, but we've never done that before. This is the first time it's happened. We're at the end of the year and we're choked for money. It is the third option on the table at this point. I got your point. I understand.
And it's an option we don't want to
Right.
use.
And we looked at that clearly as worst-case scenario.
Yep.
We knew that there were 2 departments with substantial savings that would cover a big chunk. There's probably more, but they have not looked at every department yet to see where they're going to be in the next few months. I just looked at it, and I will take responsibility for that. I said to Jamie, worst-case scenario, if we can't get one more penny out of another department, would we be able to cover it this way? Otherwise, we would be looking at potentially freezing expenses and things. So nobody came to me and said, we want to use FinCom reserve. I looked at that and said, worst case scenario, there is no money available anywhere else. Could we cover it if we had to?
Yeah, and technically, they can't use the FinCom reserve.
No, I know
to
you
settle
can't
collective
use,
bargaining.
you can't use it directly, but there would
Right.
be ways around it in order to get to the request for the transfer.
As I described, right.
But the thing is, maybe some of these other departments really don't need all of their vehicles. I don't know. Maybe we ought to take a look at that again. We have an awful lot of vehicles in this town.
Okay.
Well, we couldn't borrow for,
No. It has to
So
be something we're
use,
paying cash for.
use cash.
By midweek, I should be able to send to
But
the
that's next-
chairman a memo on my investigation of the other departments and how we're going to do this. We just started on Friday.
Well, I would look forward to seeing that we will be able to fund them without going through some of the other things that you've mentioned. Thank
So
you.
would I.
Thank you.
Okay, I think John Malley, John Rock?
I'm in agreement with Dr. Camacho about this bonus thing. If you're gonna, what was the reason to eliminate retroactive? To encourage people to settle?
Correct.
But if you replace it with something almost equal, it defeats the purpose.
But it wasn't
This
equal.
is,
It's
this is not anywhere near equal. This is a contract that expired in June 30, 2012.
So the retro would have been,
The retro would have been 2 years' worth of retro, which is traditionally what the town has paid, which is why it looks like a roller coaster ride when you take a look at salaries throughout the years. And this board made a courageous decision that they were going to pay retroactivity, and they haven't. On the other hand, signing bonuses are common, even in the private sector.
What, well, I know, like a good left-handed pitcher might get one in the major leagues, but I've never gotten one in the private sector. Maybe I'm just not worth it. But the other thing is everybody in the grid where they're supposed to be now?
almost.
The fire is not in the grid. The fire, it has equivalent numbers to the grid, but they would not agree to go into the grid.
So in future years, we're not going to see these salary increases due to grid, putting people into grids because they're already in them?
Correct.
Good. And the other thing is, in the future, we're just not going to be able to afford stipends, bonuses, sick leave buyback. That's not a private sector thing. That's
You're contractually bound to
right.
sick leave
So
buyback.
uncontractually bound yourselves to it. I realize we've signed these contracts, and I realize, you know, your explanation for the bonus in this case, okay, you know, that makes sense. But at some point, you know, these seems like things that we just can't afford anymore. And And we're going to have to limit pay increases, no matter if it's lanes or grids or whatever, or step increases to 2.5%, because we're going to run out of money.
Well, we would agree with you from a management perspective, but as we've informed the board, and I'll inform the FinCom, once you've given away the candy store, you got to buy it back. These people are not going to give up these benefits that they have bargained for and received, which in this state are a mandatory subject of collective bargaining, unless we're willing to buy them back. It's really that simple.
And through this process, that's happening. So, for example, the
Very
stipend for a
slowly.
police officer doesn't get money for carrying a gun anymore. It's part of their salary. But there's a lot of examples of that. There are positions that, once that position retires, the replacement doesn't go into the union. There are managers that were taken out of a union, which shouldn't have been in the first place. So there's a lot of concessions that are being made on both sides, which is why it's called collective bargaining. But I understand your point, John.
I understand that, but the alternative's going to be like pretty big layoffs at some point. So I guess that's, a choice that's going to have to be made.
Well, I think you could see that most in the teacher's contract, and the fact that the town manager and other people from town side in their review of that contract know that there's going to be substantial impact of that contract in the next year. And you will be faced with either layoffs or a substantial increase.
Okay, well, I just wanted to raise these points and to agree with Dr. Camacho. She made a good point.
Ed?
Contract, is everybody on the grid yet? Are you still negotiating with a few people as to placement?
I can't hear the question, Ed.
On the, this contract with this union, is everybody on the grid yet, or have you settled all, where am I gonna go kind of things?
Yes.
Okay, the town grid in general, when you negotiate next year, or whenever the next contract is up, does everybody move up? How do you move up on the grid? Is it automatic, you hear a year, you move up a bump, or how, on the grid side, on the town side? And is everybody gonna get an automatic 2.5, whether we settle the contracts or not every year, like the school department? Is that set up that way?
That's what will happen, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Until we settle, but we are also starting to negotiate now a performance review methodology that will result in anybody who doesn't get a satisfactory review will not get a step.
Merit-based pay?
That would be nice. Only in Colorado.
Other questions from the committee on the contract? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
John, second. Denise? Discussion? All those in favor, show of hands. It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Thank you, Mr. HR Director. I'm not sure if we got other business. I see this request for a transfer from the veterans that just showed up tonight. Ed?
Can I ask the town manager one general question
Sure, go
before he
ahead.
takes off? In theory, if we only do 1.5 every year instead of 2.5 all the time on raising the taxes, what do you think the impact on the budget might be? Instead of maxing out 2.5 every single year, and everybody knows it's 2.5.
Well, there were years where we did like a half, and a 1. So 2.5 isn't standard, and that's not what we've always done.
And we're on a $100 million budget. 2% is $2 million every single year, and it grows because the base gets bigger, so the number of math gets even bigger. So at some point, it's not going to work. It's math.
Well, 80% of the 2%, 80% of the salary, the town's budget is salary, so.
Revenue's not limited to 2.5.
No, this year revenue's up over 6%. Yet the town budget totally is up only 4%. The town side of the budget is up only 3%. It's a misnomer to say revenue only goes up 2.5%. It does not.
We have other sources of revenue, for example, local receipts, the excise taxes, the restaurant, the hotel taxes, all those kind of things are another funding source. Plus, we get Chapter 70 money from state aid, those kind of things are a different, additional source of money. We
Yeah,
have
but
revenues.
those aren't stable. They don't go up 2.5%, 3%.
I
every single
understand
year.
what you're saying.
And the same with the excise tax. I mean, we got a big bump the last couple of years. Everybody traded in their beaters for newer cars. That delta's not gonna last. At some point, it's gonna roll over, because valuations, but anyway.
Mr.
Right, but the town manager's right, Ed. It is a misnomer to say that our revenue increase is only 2.5%. It hasn't been 2.5% for I don't know how long. We've always gotten more, which doesn't mean we need to spend more. We work very hard to see that we don't have to do that, when 80% of the expenses in town are payroll. So, when times are lean, people lost their jobs. There's just no alternative. I mean, when the town doesn't have the money, they don't have the money. And right now, the revenue sheet shows a negative deficit of almost $68,000 after we get done funding everything, because just since the last meeting, we got hit with another $150,000 in unexpected expenses. So I hear what you're saying, but, and the better plan is to, start targeting some revenues, new sources of revenues, building out the industrial base, if North Stoughton Development, all that revenue from new taxes there can be targeted to, say, the building funds, which is one of the selectmen are purporting to do, it's a great idea. So let's start self-funding this stuff instead of borrowing in the future. I love that kind of thinking. Anyways, so we have a motion, a second, and discussion, and we've voted, so we're all set to move on.
Mr. Chairman,
right?
just
Yes.
one other thing. I assume Jamie forwarded to your committee my memo to the town manager, which is a recap of collective bargaining. And if there are any questions on it, I would be glad to entertain calls from your committee to explain it.
I did get it. I don't think we had time to make copies, but I'm going to ask Joanne to do that now and distribute it while we discuss the veterans transfer. So, but thank you. I thought it was pretty enlightening.
We don't have the veterans transfer.
I know that. So, yeah, would you ask Joanne to do that too? I just showed up in front of me tonight. I didn't have it before I got here. It's a transfer request for $66,000. So we discussed last week that he'll have funding pretty much through the end of April. And I think that he's going to need May, June. And he's anticipating $66,000 at this point. So we can consider that this evening and approve it, or we can wait till the next Finance Committee meeting, and I'm not sure when that's going to be. Up to you folks.
I want to put it off.
Yeah? I'm sorry, Bob?
I would like to put it off
Okay.
So that we can review the transfer.
so that we can review it.
Dr. Camacho.
I thought we were trying to operate in somewhat of an organized manner where that we get things, we took the contract home, we looked at it over the weekend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now tonight, we're getting something we haven't seen, we're going to have it put in front of us, and we're asked to vote on it.
We're not going to. Barbara just asked that we don't, and that's fine with me.
I thought she said she wanted to do.
No, she said put it off.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I said
terribly
I'm
sorry.
willing to do whatever the committee would like to do. So take it home and look at it, and next time we meet, which will be before town meeting, then we can
I don't think we should start to set that precedent that it can come and sit on the table
haven't.
that night.
and we're not going to. But if this committee looked at it, knew it's a transfer for the veterans, and, we know what the general questions have been in the past, and people felt comfortable with it, because it's kind of a routine thing at this point, unfortunately, because we can't project with any degree of reliability what those benefits are going to be, or the requests, or the number of folks that the veterans are trying to help out, so. But I'm happy to put it off, and we can rehear it the next time we meet. No problem. Because it's not going to be needed until May, June anyway.
Okay, I was going to say, he's not in danger of running out of money at this point,
No.
so, okay.
Nope.
This very well may be, though, a meeting before the meeting, and I know some people don't enjoy those either. So we have to weigh that. Unless we have another meeting in April, it will probably be before a town meeting, I would think.
No, I just said if we're gonna probably meet one time before town
Okay.
meeting. Yeah, we're not meeting on a night of town meeting to do this,
Okay,
so
because I did not want that.
I might have to schedule a meeting just for this, but, but that's where we're at. What's being copied, and maybe Jamie, you want to speak to it a little bit, but it was a summary of the underlying assumptions from a bargaining standpoint, strategies, and then the objectives to meet those goals. So, and it's kind of drawn out in a little bit more detail. It's about a 3-page document, and I thought it was well done, so I think you'd be happy with that.
And it also takes the major goals in bargaining and puts it on a grid to see where all of the goals were
Central
in relation to each of the collective bargaining units.
Joanne's passing it out? Yep. Before we move to any other business, I'll wait till you're done, because you
She doesn't
probably
have
saying,
4
I'm
arms.
gonna have to be watching the video to get the minutes.
Could I just ask again,
Yeah, go ahead.
what is the town invested in? It hasn't-
Thank you.
Oh, and the other income line? I have no idea. I'm sure it's short-term bonds. The question was, what are the investments that the town has? So the overnight float or wherever, they've got they pre-borrow cash sometimes for articles. They've got money from reserves and people spent, paying ambulance fees, those kind of things. Where's all that money invested?
I would get that information for you from the treasurer. She is limited into what she can invest in by law. So she has a lot of the stuff just in overnight and sweep accounts, those sorts of things. I know she used 3 or 4 different banks, but we can get that information for you.
Great, appreciate that. Please tell me that they don't invest in anything that the union's related to.
We don't do derivatives.
Okay, so you have a document in front of you. Take a couple of minutes to look at that. I get one back. Oh.
Need more?
So you can see the first part of this, the first 6 bullets are the Board of Selectmen's goals for collective bargaining, and then the Board of Selectmen set priorities. And then beyond that are some of the footnotes for some of the things that that they were also able to achieve above and beyond their goals. Page 2 is kind of a grid that shows all the departments across the top and the goals along the left margin. So you can see what's been done here against the goals. And then some follow-up notes by collective bargaining unit rounds off this document. So you can see based on the priorities, let's look at that grid. The first year, a 3-year contract. Across the board, every department, yep, they got a 3-year contract. The next priority was a signed collective bargaining agreement. Yes, they is pending, but actually I think that needs to be updated because it is signed. One of those was that you weren't going to work through MOAs anymore. What you did do was negotiate an MOA. You're now building that into the document, creating a brand new agreement with all of those stipulations included in it. So, and then they'll re-meet as a unit and approve those.
Correct.
Okay. The next one was, the next priority was no retro, and you can see where signing bonuses were substituted in place of those in some cases.
You can see it with color.
Oh yeah. Recognition CL position specific. Not sure what that one is.
He has a question.
So Jamie, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fourth item down on the grid. Says recognition CL, position specific.
Recognition clause is specific to the positions. In the past, the recognition clauses were very general, and it would say, like, all the employees who work in the library. And it, instead of having the clerical employees in one unit and the professional employees in a unit, it was just by geography, in effect, and not by the type of job they did.
So now it would be librarians, assistant librarian, child librarian, et cetera.
And we took the custodians and put them into Thea, where all the other custodians are.
That's right. Yep.
And we did that pretty much across the board, either through collective bargaining or through reorganizations.
Okay. Personal bylaw, yes, they've all accepted and adopted the personal bylaws in their agreements.
By reference, so they're in the contract. And
Town management rights, all but fire, Thea,
Yes.
and have adopted it. The police have something very similar.
yes, the police's management rights were almost identical to the ones we had, so we didn't change them.
Okay.
Management rights are, a clause is a list of all of the town management rights, such as being able to transfer people, being able to, change the hours of work, being able to reassign in certain cases, being able to discipline, being able to, all of the various management rights.
I thought they were actually part of the personnel bylaw. Separate document?
This is a separate document. It's
Okay.
considerably more extensive.
Typically, management rights are not something that an employee or a union can grieve.
Okay. Town grid classification, yes, all up to fire. It says dollar amounts class plan.
The dollar amounts are the same as the plan, but
So it's
they're
the
not
running,
on the grid. They're
it's
not
like running in
assigned to
parallel.
Grade 5, step 5.
Okay. Steps 2.5, no COLA, yes, across the board. Confidential senior management designations. So DPW is pending, fire is no, library, yes, police are NA. SPAY is partial, superior officers, yes, and Thayer is partial.
Yes. With the fire, we tried to get the deputy chief out of the unit, and we ended up settling without accomplishing that. With DPW, it's pending the approval of the fiscal year 16 budget. We'll have reorganized to such an extent that we are confident. And then it would be similar in SPAY and Thea, where a number of things have been done, and with the Thea contract, they accepted as part of the contract the town reorganization plan.
Okay. Job-related stipend elimination, it was really only applicable to fire, police, and superior officers, and those have been eliminated.
Yes.
Super longevity has been eliminated across the board except for fire.
Fire you had already had that eliminated in the past.
Okay. And then performance evaluations are,
We have to negotiate that.
Pending
and
negotiation.
That was part of the agreements too. Once all the agreements were settled, we would go in and negotiate a comprehensive plan and program.
any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Roberta.
As far as performance evaluation program, pending all the way across the board,
Yes, we have to,
you're going...
we have to negotiate it, and
All right,
we're doing that as, we also have to negotiate the job descriptions as far as the impact of what we're doing with our rewriting of all the job descriptions. So we're going to put that all together as part of negotiations prior to the next contract negotiation.
so if people were placed on a grid, don't they have a job description?
Yeah, we have draft job descriptions, but we have to bargain the impact of assigning the duties to the people. We have to give the union an opportunity to comment on it.
All right, so you basically have job descriptions available,
Yes.
draft job descriptions available. And how many months, I don't want to say years, is it going to take to get evaluations in place?
The agreement that we signed with all of the unions is that we will negotiate it prior to beginning negotiations on the next contracts. They evolve.
What does that mean in terms of time, real time?
Sometime in the next 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months? When do you start to negotiate the next contract?
Depending on the contract, 9 months from now. But I'd like to start to fold some discussions in prior to that while we're doing the negotiations on the performance evaluation program.
So when do you anticipate that people working on the town side of, I hate to say the town side, in the town departments, not the school departments, because the school departments always did have evaluations. When do you anticipate that people will, everyone who was a town employee will be evaluated, have an evaluation?
I anticipate by fiscal 17, we'll be going through a test run for a year on them, and then by fiscal 18, it should be in place.
So it takes, what, 3 years to get an evaluation system in place?
No, I'd like to run through it for a year because it's going to also necessitate an appeal process of the evaluations. And I want to run through it for a year and make sure everything works right. It would be foolhardy to do it and then find out that something didn't work and not be able to go back and fix it.
I understand that, and I understand I understand the situation that you're in, but I just don't understand how it ever came to the point that people were negotiating contracts and receiving raises and were never being evaluated. I don't know how that ever happened. And I don't want to go back and discuss, there's no sense in going back over something that's in the past, but it's just,
I agree.
it's unfortunate that it happened in this town.
I agree. It's also, it's the first town I've ever seen when I walked through the door to be employed here that the town manager, myself, and 1 or 2 employees were the only people that weren't in a union. All senior managers were in a union.
All right, well, I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your efforts, and I know you've put a lot of efforts. You have, and the town manager and the budget team have done a lot with this, and I really thank you for all of that. But it's very disheartening when you think back over the years and think that nothing was done for so many years. That's all. That's all I have to say. I have nothing more to say.
Thanks, Roberta. Pat, you have an item here that we tripped across that we need to address in the budget. We're going to have to reopen the budget and vote, re-vote a line item.
I'll make the motion first, and then when I get seconded, I'll explain. I need to make a...
Actually, probably should explain, give a headline anyway.
Okay. When I was working with Jamie, going through to see what money was available for Thea, my mind went to Central Dispatch because we haven't set that department up yet. Turns out we really can't use the police money because, can I just say, they're going to be very tight for the end of the year. So when I looked at the Central Dispatch budget, though, if you look at page 24,
By the way, confuses me to pieces, but let's move on from there. $5 million budget. Sorry.
I've had to find my Zen place. But if you look at page 24, the Central Dispatch budget, does everybody have that? If you look at the four salaries in the FinCom column, there's $68,225, $339,887 for dispatchers, $11,005 for dispatches per diem, and $48,000 for overtime. That does not equal the subtotal of $399,387. That subtotal really should be $467,612, which would bring a new department bottom line of $515,612. Somehow that just didn't get included in the formula.
When we were working on Friday and then Pat brought it up and we looked at it, it was a glitch in the Excel formula.
So we do have to fix this. Now, I have to say that I would have preferred if I could have gone through all of them today to verify, but I have not gotten to that. So I'll continue to do that so that we'll know if there's anything else. It's just the way my mind works. No reason to think there is, but when I see one, I just feel more comfortable doing the rest. So I would like to make a motion to reopen the Central Dispatch budget.
Well, actually, we need to reopen the budget.
The whole budget?
Yeah.
Motion to reopen the entire budget.
John seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed or abstaining? Looks like it was unanimous. Go ahead, Pat.
Motion to approve Central Dispatch budget for a total of $515,612.
Second.
I'm sorry, this is a motion to adjust the budget that we approved, right? And you're
The
changing-
new bottom line?
Yeah, so we're changing from 447,387?
Yes, to $515,612.
Okay. And that's your total as of today. Okay, Pat has made a motion and John has seconded it. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, raise your hands. It's unanimous.
Just for the record, I wanted to give the new,
Can we close the budget first?
I just wanted to give you the total.
Okay,
Is
well,
that-
we're going to need that to close the budget.
Okay. The new total budget is $100,599,232.53.
That includes the enterprise accounts.
It does. What I did is when I subtracted the enterprise account from that number, I did get the budget number of 86,068,689. That's on the latest revenue sheet. So that I feel confident that the latest budget number is in the latest revenue sheet.
And this is page one,
Yes.
right, that you're adjusting the totals?
Yes.
And where did that number get adjusted from? Public safety, right?
Yes.
There's a new total for public safety on the summary sheet on the first page.
That number would be, okay, let me just shrink this. My eyes are getting old. The new public safety number would be $12,286,347.17.
Okay, excellent, thank you, Pat. So we need a motion to approve the budget at $100,599,232.53.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
John, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show of hands, please. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. I I don't think we have any other business, right?
I don't.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape.
Other than to say, I'm finishing the footnotes.
Right.
In that employee change sheet, Jamie was very helpful with that. I understand it now enough to explain it, and I'm more than halfway done, so I'll have that, I'm not going to bed until I get that done, so Jamie can have it when she wakes up in the morning, because she's got to go to press this week.
Yeah, I want to make a motion that there's no Munis training ever again at the end of the Finance Committee year. And that I want to put teeth in that, so. Now, our target is to finish up the budget and have a complete working draft by the beginning of Wednesday morning, because it has to be at the printers the next day. So we're going to distribute to a core group of people to read, and the core group might be the whole committee, but at this point, we need to proof it and make sure it's perfect. The motions will have been run by town council and by bond council. The holdup at this point is Bill needs to finish writing in the unspent articles amounts by a particular article and where they're applicable. So we're looking to see how much we can offset in cash first, so we can pick up some cash, and then it would then offset borrowing as a second step. So that's in the motion, and we'll probably get that done hopefully for Wednesday. That aside, I think we're in fair shape at this point. So Ed first, then John.
Just a quick question to Pat. That number we approved on the budget included the 74,000, whatever, plus or minus for the new contract, right?
Includes everything.
Yes, it includes,
It's all in.
yeah, it includes Thayer, and it includes the central dispatch correction, yes.
And on the back of the revenue sheet, Ed, you'll see there's a cover note from the town accountant accounting for that stuff, okay? John?
When you're sending out this revised budget and everything, will it be an Excel format, or will it just be a PDF like it usually is?
Well, it's a report, so some of it's Excel, some of it's Word, so it's a kind of, and some
Well, no, I
of it's
just mean like
PDF.
the actual
It'd be a
budget
PDF.
part of it would
It'd
be, wouldn't be an Excel.
Yeah, we can't. How do you send out a budget that's part PDF? I mean, one document that's part PDF, part Excel, part Word, part...
Oh, I know. I just like when you're looking at it and trying to, if you want us to like look at it and go over it, it's not as easy to have it in the actual Excel format.
PDF.
That's all.
If you want the budget in Excel, we can do that. With that said, motion to adjourn the meeting. Wait a minute, I'm asking for a motion. Do you want to make it, Bob? Okay. Ed seconding. You were seconding, right, Ed? I don't want to read things in as post. Okay, so Ed made the motion and Bob seconding. I wouldn't want to presume, as sometime occurs on other boards and committees in this town. We've got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Unseen. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Adjourning. Brian, thank you so much for your patience.